Hi everyone, and welcome back to my Create a Story You Love channel. I'm so excited to be back again to share with you what I've been learning these past few years as I've continued to write fiction. I'm trying to think, I think I've written 8 more sweet romance books under a pen name, and I am partway through a middle grade fiction under my Lorna Faith author name. This one is I've never written middle grade before, so this is going to be fun. And but this one is based on or inspired by, maybe that's a better way to say it, by true events from my own childhood as the youngest of 11 children, growing up in pioneering land in the north. And so this one is quite fun to write. But anyway, I'm sidetracked. But I thought today, in this video, I thought we would start with a short overview of 10 steps on how to write your novel. This video will be a tie-in with the video series I will start next week on 7 foundational steps to brainstorm and plot your novel. And so if you are wanting to write your novel, I hope this video will be helpful for you, and then the continuing series later on. So first step is establish your favorite writing spot. Write in a place that you are comfortable and where it's, basically you feel like it's your space to write. And that might be as simple as the kitchen table, or it could be maybe you find it easier to go to a coffee shop, or even sometimes people write in their car, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. You do what works for you. I know for myself, often I will take the laptop, downstairs, and I'll just brainstorm on the couch. And, brainstorming seems to work good for me that way. But as far as writing, I will, once I have the brainstorming done, I will come back and write right here, actually, on my desk. I'll write with my desktop computer, and but that's what works for me. And so, along those lines, double check that you have the writing tools that you need. It doesn't need to be fancy, but a laptop or a desktop computer. And if you want your favorite software, for myself, I love writing in Scrivener, but everybody has their preferences of what they like to use. Word works for some. Some people, some writers write simply in like Google Drive. And so you do what works for you. Make a list of everything you need for when you begin writing. I'm a little old school. I like to have a pen and a notebook and some index cards. I like the, because I can add color, and each character gets a different color for the index cards. It inspires me. But you do you, and but I find those are helpful. Have a pen and a notebook and all the tools ready, and have it all organized so you don't need to get up when you're in the middle of the flow of writing and when the ideas are really coming. Otherwise, you'll need to get up and grab some stuff, and what it'll do is you'll get distracted when you're in the middle of writing, trying to look for things. So I just encourage you to have it all nearby. That's number one. That's, ideas on how to establish your favorite writing spot. Number 2, break your novel into bite-sized pieces. We all know writing a book is a big project, which I think is why many of us, it takes a while to get started on writing our book. I know for me, it took me years, literally years to write. I'll do a video on that at some point where just, where I felt like I was just hounded by fear, that held me back for years from writing, from actually writing any fiction. And so, but the way to, step into a big project is by bringing it down into bite-sized pieces. You remember the saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I feel like that's true for fiction, because sometimes fiction books can be really long. I remember my first historical fiction was 117,000 words, which is quite large. And so it ends up being, a 300 to 400 page fiction book, when all is said and done. But the good news is that all of those pages are made up of 3 acts, but there's many beats in each act. And then within the beats are chapters, and you are narrowing it down further. And each chapter is made up of paragraphs and sentences. So when you break it down like that, it simplifies it, right? It makes it easier. Your mind says, oh, okay, now maybe I can do this, instead of having this big, huge project. It feels like it suddenly it becomes doable and a lot simpler and, figure outable. And so I encourage you to break it down into bite-sized pieces. Number 3, really understand your big idea for your novel. It needs to be a book that you're passionate to write. Ask yourself if you can see yourself writing this book for the next 6 months or even a year. If the answer is yes, then you have an idea that you can really go with. When you're writing an idea, thinking of brainstorming an idea for your novel, try to think of a big enough concept that others would enjoy reading. And if you've started writing a novel and you get blocked around a quarter of the way through, you get stopped, and you just, you feel like there's not enough ideas to go on, it could possibly be that your idea is not big enough. One way to know if your idea is a good one is that you can't get it out of your mind. You want to talk about your novel idea to your friends and your family, and every time you do, the idea seems to grow. Then you know that you have a good idea. Number 4, build your novel's outline. The foundation for your novel is really important. Not every writer outlines their book, and some writers really thrive on being a pantser, or a discovery writer, which is writing by the seat of your pants. So some writers are famous for being pantsers, like Stephen King. In his book on writing, he says, put interesting characters in difficult situations and write to find out what happens, which is very true. And so I'm a bit of a discovery writer myself. What I like to do is I like to sketch out a quick story summary and brainstorm my main characters and my secondary character before I begin to write. And I brainstorm my setting too before I begin to write. And but I also like to have an idea of my story's the main foundational elements, and which we'll be talking about actually in starting in this next video series starting next week. But I like to have an idea of my main story's elements before I begin. And these foundational elements include, number 1, your inciting incident, which is basically a life-changing event that happens to the hero that catapults them into the new world or a new way of thinking. Number 2, crossing the threshold moment. This is where the hero decides to accept the call to adventure or to action and leaves their ordinary world to try something new. Number 3, the midpoint revelation, which is the middle of your novel where something happens that raises the stakes and pushes the hero toward real change. Number 4, all is lost moment, and this is an action beat where something happens to the hero that, combined with their wounds and their fears, pushes the hero to rock bottom. And then number 5, in Act 3, this is the aha moment for the hero, where the hero realizes what they must do to fix all the problems they've created in Act 2, and more importantly, what they must do to fix themselves, right? So this is the hero's transformational change. So that's an important part. So those are the 5 really foundational elements that to really know where your book is going. So the inciting incident, the crossing the threshold moment, the midpoint revelation, all is lost moment, and the Act 3 aha moment for the hero. So those are really important. So I would encourage you to write these out in a notebook or on a notepad, and it can be as simple as writing these details on one sheet of paper. If you do write an outline, however minimal, maybe you just write down a few beats or those foundational elements, or however detailed it is, remember that your outline is there to help and serve you, not the other way around. So if, as you're writing, for example, you start to drift away from your outline, which happens to me a lot, don't worry. All you do is you just go back and revise your original outline so it fits with the story you're telling. and it'll work out. It's worked out for me. I just revise it. I'll be halfway through and I'll revise, kind of because the story seems to have changed or something about one of the characters changed. And so I'll have to go back and I'll revise that outline, but it works. And then I go on and I get to the ending that's maybe just a little different than how I started. But I often find that it's better. I let it just flow like that, and I find out that the ending is better than my original idea. So don't worry about that. If you stray from the outline, just revise it and go back to writing. Number 5, set a firm writing schedule so you can finish your book on time. This can be difficult for so many writers, and me included in that. But if you really want to finish writing your novel by a certain deadline, there is a way to figure it out. For example, if you want to write a 60,000 word novel in 90 days, so basically 3 months, you would calculate how many words you would need to write each week to reach your goal. And if you decided that you weren't going to write on Saturdays and Sundays, so you only had 5 days a week to write, you would subtract approximately 26 days from the allotted 90 days. So now you have 64 writing days. 60,000 words divided by 64 days to write would be 938 words per day for 5 days a week. And so that's doable. That's almost 1,000 words a day. And that would be doable to have your book done by your 90-day deadline. So if you're like me and you are making your own deadlines as an indie author, which is a good idea, to get your books done in time, but sometimes it can be tempting to fudge on your own deadlines, and this has happened to me a lot. But it's caused a lot more stress. So I encourage you not to do that. Try to keep your deadlines, that they are, it would take something like some kind of disaster for you not to keep your deadline. And you'll feel better. You'll feel less stressed. But give yourself room. And so if you think 90 days is, well, that's not going to be enough time, then give yourself 6 months to write your book, and you'll be able to do it. You'll be able to get it done in time. And just remember, as you start writing, you might be able to only manage 500 words a day, and that's okay. All you need to do is to change your deadline. I would encourage you to just look over what you do every day. Are there things that you could change in your life? Cut out some TV or just some extras in order to meet your deadline. So just look over what you do for every week. And if there's things that you can sacrifice to meet your deadline, I would encourage you to do it. Writing a book, it does take a little bit of commitment, just like it does with anything else in life, right? And so I would encourage you to just take a look at what you do every week, and if there's things that you can just sacrifice for that amount of time until you have your book done. Number 6, write a compelling first page of your novel. Dramatic and surprising, as you want to pull readers in. You want readers to, that they just can't wait to read what happens next. James Scott Bell, who is like a coach for authors, and he writes a lot of books for writers too. He tells writers, start with the house on fire. In other words, start your novel with something that compels readers to keep reading. And I find that as a reader, I love to read books that start with something that's going to grip me and say, I have to find out what happens next. So when all is said and done, what we as authors want more than anything is for readers to say that this was the most moving, compelling, and emotional novel I've ever read. So think about your readers, first, last, always. Just think about your readers. That's the most important. Number 7, add conflict and tension to your story. Story is about conflict. So the question becomes, what exactly is conflict? Best-selling author Dwight V. Swain, in his book Techniques of the Selling Writer, says this: Conflict is another name for opposition. A man trying to walk through a locked door. It's irresistible force meeting immovable object, two entities striving to attain mutually incompatible goals. For one to win, the other must lose. Readers like conflict. It creates and heightens tensions in them. Thus, it enables them to vent repressed feelings of aggression and hostility vicariously without damage to themselves or others. End quote. So, in life itself, there is conflict. We've each experienced that. And so it's important in our characters, right? And especially our main character, our hero. It's important that they have conflict. So force your main character to confront disaster, whether it's your hero facing another person of differing opinions, or if it's your hero facing a natural disaster. Add this tension to every page of your story. Conflict will keep the reader turning the pages to find out what happens next. And that is very true. I find as a reader, books where there's mystery or there's tension or something I have to find out. All right. And so it's important for us as writers to be able to add that to our story. Number 8, keep writing through the difficult part of the messy middle. And for many writers, the messy middle is the toughest part of writing a novel. By the messy middle, I mean Act 2 really is where the middle part of your novel is formed, is in Act 2. And this is it's a difficult spot, and I totally understand that. It is for me. In my last cowboy clean romance, Under a Pen Name, I struggled to develop the conflict between the hero and the heroine in the middle part of the book. And I think for most of us fiction writers, we come into the story with a great idea that we're excited to write. We can't wait to get to the end, but we don't realize that it's going to take some brainstorming and a lot of good old-fashioned hard work to get there. And so sometimes we get so overwhelmed in the middle that we honestly feel like we should quit writing this book. And I have felt that way each time I've written another novel. I get to the middle and I think, how am I going to figure this out properly? It's true. But instead of letting your book shrivel up and die, focus on how you can bring your story back to life. So, what are some ways on how you can do this? Well, you can take a pen and a notebook and brainstorm a few scenes where there's trouble brewing on the horizon for the hero and the heroine. Remember that each scene should have a direct bearing on your main character's goals and efforts and the overarching theme or story question. You want to build the climax where the hero needs to fight the villain. Throw in some failures and mistakes along the way. And remember, the hero needs to learn her or his life lesson as well. By confronting conflict and by overcoming things. This is where the hero starts to learn the theme or the life lesson. And so this is an important part. Number 9 is write a compelling and emotionally satisfying ending for your readers. The ending to your novel begins at the climactic moment of decision for your hero. This moment marks the beginning of the end. For your hero, this begins when the hero's desires is thwarted by the opposition. At that moment, your hero commits to fight for what she wants. From the start of the messy middle, the tension and conflict of the story has been building, and now we have come to the part of your novel that has the greatest amount of conflict. So this is the climax, right? This is where the greatest amount of tension is, right? This is the moment when your hero makes a decision to really go after what she or he wants. It's when everything is on the line, and in a moment of intense feeling and emotion, your hero decides to take the risk and go for her goal. It's at this point in your novel that readers will finally see your hero for who she truly is. Now, why is that? It's because when we reach a point where decisions come from our heart or our gut, this is the part where the hero, this is the climax, right? Where the hero will reach a point where decisions will come, straight from her heart or her gut, and it speaks the truth about her at that time. And only when your hero is under crisis, and she acts on deep emotions, Will readers get the proof they need to determine whether your hero deserves to reach their goal or desire? Once the hero has reached their goal and learned the theme or the life lesson, then you can start to tie up any loose ends. This is important, that it's like your hero comes to a point where the decisions, because she's in such a crisis point, or he is, but where they will make decisions from their heart, right? And it'll speak the truth about them every time, right? Which brings us to the last tip. Number 10, go back through your story and revise and self-edit. Be very dedicated to doing a thorough read-through. Specifically check each page for, number 1, that the story is clear and easily understood. Number 2, say what you need to say with words that draw a picture for the reader vividly, but clear and without clutter. 3, be consistent. If your hero has brown eyes in chapter 1 and blue eyes in chapter 5, you'll need to choose one or the other. Number 4, double check for story flow. Take out repetitive words and awkward adjectives and adverbs. Basically, you want to polish your manuscript until you are satisfied with each scene and chapter. Learn to cut out the extra words, phrases, and yes, sometimes even scenes. I've had to do that. That don't move the story forward. That's the key. The ones that don't move the story forward are the extra words, phrases, or scenes that you'll want to cut out, because if they don't add to the story or they don't move the story forward, then there's no real point for having it there. And so you'll be happy, even though it's hard to do, especially if you have to cut a scene. It's hard to do, but you'll be happy you did. But most importantly, your readers will love reading your story because it flows so well together. So I hope that all of these tips help you as you write. And I hope you have a whole lot of fun writing your story. And I'm so glad that you joined me here today. I'll be back next week. Stay tuned for more videos coming up on how to write your novel. If you've been enjoying this video about 10 steps on how to write a fiction book, or if you're interested in any other videos coming up on how to write your novel, how to self-publish your book, how to market your book, then please hit the subscribe button below. That way you won't miss anything. See you in the next video.